Please step away.
Yes.
Please step away.
I had trouble with my top 5 this week. It was tough. It was tough.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how your top 5 and my top 5 coincide with one another. It'll be interesting to see, I think, to find out.
Mm-hmm. This was the toughest week for the top 5 I've had. By far. By far.
I would say for me, it was easy to pick the 5. It was to pick the order was rather tough.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? I think I got top 5 pretty good, but I think the order I've still him hawing about. Well, I don't know. Is this team? Is it not? Well, I don't know. Craziness. Well, let's give everyone a couple minutes to join up.
Okay.
So we'll just kind of chat as we get ready for the show here. So if you do come on by, we do appreciate it. And so crazy. We're going to talk week 3. Can you believe it's week 3 already? It just seems like, we waited and waited and waited for the start, and then the start finally happened. And now it's like, the start was like 3 weeks ago already. I can't believe it's 3 weeks already.
No, I can't either. It really, and it's gone. Knock on wood, pretty smoothly, COVID related. And that's been a little bit of a surprise to me, but a great surprise. I'm thrilled, but I did not think that based on folks, and I'm looking at you, St. Louis Cardinals, inability to control their impulses last August and go to the strip clubs, I wasn't sure that we all had the self-discipline to do what we needed to do to remain basically COVID-free.
We don't. Don't fool yourself. We don't. Nobody out there has that ability to do that. Don't fool yourself. We're just getting lucky at this point, I think.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah, because Canada's in like full blown lockdown, right? And they had the Vancouver Canucks, who got COVID real bad in their organization, and they didn't get to play games for like a solid month. So
you think it's coming?
I think eventually it's coming. We talk, like you say, knock on wood, we're talking now, it's okay, but in a couple of weeks, who knows what's going to happen? But these first 3 weeks have flown by, and so many interesting things, and lots to talk about. So we'll give everyone about 2 more minutes to join up for us before we get started, because we don't want to have to repeat ourselves.
That's
right. One thing we do need to repeat ourselves is last week on our show, like literally last week, there was someone, and I can't remember who it was, but someone on our show that predicted there was going to be a no-hitter before May. Do you remember this person?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that impressive because it would happen that night. So it would have been more impressive if it had been like on Memorial Day or something.
Now that would have been, if you could pick the date and the time and the team, let me know and we can go make some money. We can head out to Vegas.
That's fair.
But it's still a hell of a call. I told you, I emailed you that night. I was like, wow, that's a hell of a call. You had this feeling, right? Sometimes you just get this feeling, right? Something's good's going to happen. Something bad's going to happen. You get a feeling.
Well, and I think the pendulum is kind of swinging this season. I think I'm getting into it too soon, but the numbers are trending in the right way for that kind of stuff to happen. I think there's going to be another one before Memorial Day, I still think. So I'll update my prediction, but there's going to be another one. And I think that the run score trending that we're seeing in the home run data trends that we're seeing, I think if those continue to hold up, and I don't know why they wouldn't, that it's going to be more of a pitching season, and that's a good thing, I think.
Well, let's talk about that. Why not? Let's get started. Let's talk right about it. So I heard on the radio, and you're probably right along the same thing, is that runs per game down almost 1 run per game from the last, I think they averaged last 3 seasons or something. It wasn't just like last season.
Right.
So almost 1 run per game. And, people go, oh, okay, well, that's not that big a deal. But yeah, it is kind of a big deal. It's not like a little change. It's 1 run.
Right. It's, well, depending upon how it's somewhere around like a 20% drop. And that's depending upon how you count it and how you kind of break it out, tease it out a little bit. But that's significant. It is only 3 weeks. Okay. But it's a big enough drop that you can certainly, it's statistically significant, and it sort of lends credence to the changes that were made having a positive effect, or at least so far. And I think it's a good start. It's an exciting start that maybe pitching and defense is going to matter more this year, and that will have, I think, a good fan response too. So it's good. It's a good trend, and it's 3 weeks, so I think we've got enough time in to say we know enough to say that we've got the start of something different going on, and that's a good thing. Not revolutionary, but different, and it's good. It's good.
Yeah, I think so. Two things I hear about it, and we'll talk about it. Number one is the weather. It's been a very cold April. We all know the ball doesn't fly in the cold weather, blah, 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 blah. And the second thing is people are saying that because the offenses didn't get 162 games last year, they didn't get that repetition. Offense took a step back, and that's why this year started off so bad. What do you think? Any of those?
Well, I mean, I just keep thinking about. I mean, I've heard Brandon Woodruff of the Brewers have two remarkable interviews where he's been really, really forthcoming, and he just kind of looks at last year like, an extended off-season workout. And so if what he's saying makes sense, and to me it does, then what we're saying is that the pitchers should be maybe they should be at least as far behind as the hitters are, maybe more, because there's more. I'm an old pitcher, but I would say there's more of an art to pitching, and it's more difficult to do on a consistent basis for people that do it once out of every 5 or 6 days. And so, and even worse, of course, if you take, a period of months off, like they did last year. So I would have thought that at least in terms of control, if not in terms of stuff, the pitchers would have had a much slower start this year. And but they're not. They're doing pretty well, and I think part of it's the ball and part of it's the weather. But I'm seeing a lot of warning track flyouts, and that's telling me something's different. It's probably a combination of all those factors, but those balls aren't leaving the yard anymore. They're getting caught, and so it's I think it's too easy to say, well, the hitters lost some time, and so they're not up to par yet. I mean, I don't know. I
mean, like you said, it could go either way, right? Because you got, well, the pitchers still need to get the repetition in, and they still need to do the same thing, and they had just as much time as the hitters. I generally go along with it's easier to play defense than offense. Mentality is, so it usually takes the offenses a little time to catch up with, what the defense is doing. So, I mean, that's kind of my philosophy. Some people like you might see it takes the offenses longer or easier for the offenses and harder on the defenses or whatever, vice versa. But, it's 3 weeks. It is different. Is it going to be different at the end of the season? Is the next question, or is all of a sudden May, June, July hitters are going to get hot, and then we're going to be back to square one? What do you think?
Well, I think that goes back. I mean, if COVID doesn't, sort of sink its teeth into this season, then I don't think that there's any reason to suspect that the rest of the season would be different from the first 3 weeks in a radical way. If, on the other hand, we get teams having an extended layoff for whatever reason due to COVID positive test results, maybe, I don't know, let's play this out a few months. Maybe the COVID variants, there's no coverage in the vaccine and people get really, really sick. Okay, so if that happens and we're talking about teams missing a week or 2 or 3 of play or chunks of those, then I think all bets are off. But if it stays like basically what we're doing right now, then I think that it's, I mean, I remember 1987, and like in 1987, the ball was flying off the bats, and it was the first few weeks of the season, and everyone said, oh, the pitchers are horrible, the pitchers are horrible. But these little backup second basemen that weighed 43 pounds were hitting the ball 9 miles. And that was like this sea change that happened in April. And everyone was so, oh my God, well, what's causing that? And then obviously later on, we found out they were wrapping the ball tighter and all that. And Pete Rose cut into a baseball and all this stuff. But what they found out was that what happened in that first 3 weeks, the first 4 weeks of the season, held through. And I think that is what we're going to see here, barring a COVID catastrophe. I don't know why the first 3 weeks would be remarkably different. The weather is different. The weather is a factor. But the parks are so small in the main that I think, that's probably not going to be something that is a huge factor that would cause offenses to drop by this much. I mean, to run a game is a lot, and so I don't see weather causing that kind of a drop. But I could be wrong, but I don't think so. What do you think?
I think I'd like to think that it would be the same at the end of the season, and that the pitchers or the hitters are not just having a slow start compared to the pitchers. I would hope that towards the end of the season it will be 3/4 to a rundown, which is what it is now, and then we can say, okay, so the ball did make some change, or whatever the resulting was. Some things made a change. Whether it's batters or now, I mean, it can be a million things, right? We talked about this in like week 1. Batters are actually now figured out after 3 years that they shouldn't try to hit it into the shift and trying to hit it into the open holes now. And I see that a lot more than I had in the last 3 years combined. Mm-hmm. So maybe teams will stop playing the shift as much.
Well, I think the other thing that I thought was so remarkable this week was that Mickey Moniak, who just got called up, got a hit. So he's fresh up from the Phillies system. And in the first week of play, in fact, I think it was his third game, he goes against the shift to get a hit. So this is a guy, now granted, okay, he was a number one pick and a lot of fanfare and hype and all that stuff, but he's still fresh from the minors. And what's one of the first things he does is he goes against the shift. Now, maybe Mickey Moniak came up with that himself, or maybe he's being coached that way in the system. And if that's happening, then I think we're going to see a trend that will help to break the shift without any rule changes, which wouldn't that be nice? So
yes, it would be. I mean, that's what we're hoping for. Let's be honest. That's what we're hoping for. We don't need no stupid rule change about two players on each side of the bag or whatever, before the pitch, and then after the pitcher starts his windup, then you see the third or the shortstop running over to the other side of the field every play. That's just come on. Right. That's just going to be ridiculous.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and share my screen and talk about this. So raise your hand, everyone out there, if you had the Boston Red Sox, Kansas City Royals, and Oakland A's winning their divisions. Anyone out there? I don't see any hands being raised. That's some craziness going on right there.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? I don't think anybody in their right mind would have picked Boston, Kansas City, and Oakland to be winning their divisions 3 weeks into the season. Okay, maybe Kansas City gets off to a good start, or maybe Boston gets off to a good start and they, win 5 of their first 6 games. We're talking what, 18 games in, almost 18, roughly on average. About most teams have played 17 to 19 games already. So we're not talking a small sample size. We're talking a little bit a sample size here.
Right.
And Boston, Kansas City, Oakland. And I know 2 of those 3 teams, somebody had talked about being watch out for these teams this year. So it makes me feel good. Because once in a while, I like to feel like I know what I'm talking about. And this is vindication for me because everyone rolled their eyes. How many times does that happen to you, Kirk? You tell somebody something, and then they roll their eyes like, oh, my God, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about.
Well, that's pretty much my life on a daily basis. So I definitely know what you're going through there. It's that American League East. Boy, you had a handle on it, and I sure didn't. And there's a long way to go, of course. Yeah. But there were a lot of people that thought that the Red Sox would be buried already. So
right.
So that was, and the Royals. I mean,
I would like to find out how many. It seems like every Kansas City game is like 10-8, 14-11. I mean, talk about. We just talked about how the baseball isn't traveling, but it seems like Kansas City is getting singles and doubles and stealing bases and like old time baseball, right? And I told you guys they're a fun team to watch because it isn't just step up to the plate and try and hit it over the fence. The team that's doing that, the New York Yankees, is currently in last place in their division, and they were talking on the radio on the way home from work today that, the Yankees are all, what do they call it? All or nothing, right? They're swinging for the fence. Every player on their team is swinging for the fence to hit the home run. And if they hit like 8 home runs a game, they win. If they don't hit 8 home runs, they lose. So 6-10 means you're not going to win unless you change your strategy. And they were talking about benching Stanton and making changes and trying to get Luke Voigt. We'll talk about the Yankees some more because I'm sure. But, what do you think? I mean, do you see the teams maybe at the top because of the rule changes and the ball and because of what's going on?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think the Royals, like as you were saying, I think are really good. There's a couple things going on there. Number one is their average age is about 14, and I think that matters. Uh, I think Mike Matheny's got a weird thing going on there with them, and he's not my favorite in-game manager, but whatever it is that he's doing um, is striking a chord with them clearly. And I think that in terms of the long haul, their young pitchers are going to come around, and I think that they're going to have a decent season. This American League Central, to me, is just loaded with good teams, and I think they're an impressive organization from the standpoint of really 2 years ago. I think a good question was, what in the world are they doing? And now their kids have come along and they've made some good acquisitions. And I can't believe it, but they picked the right manager, even if he does bring the infield in the third inning. And it's working for them for right now. And that's impressive. And they're not relying on, the Yankee thing. I don't know. I mean, what is it that you do? You can't, I mean, you're sort of stuck. The salaries are going to dictate in large part who plays unless somebody gets hurt. And so, I don't like Stanton. What do you do with him? He's like Walter Matthau in a movie. What do you do with him? I mean, what
Right.
is he doing there? And
Right.
so people, I mean, okay, he'll hit the ball into the upper deck once in a while, but then you got all the other at bats that you're waiting for him to do something, and he's clogging up the bases, and he's not getting on base, and and you can't have if you're going to have a 13-man pitching staff, you can't have guys that are exclusively DHs anymore. And that's really all you can do with him. Yeah. Plus, they've got Voit. Plus, they've got Sanchez. It's like they're collecting them. It's like Steinbrenner used to do.
I mean, that's kind of the thing is they were talking about how the Yankees, you could take any one of these players and interact them with another one because they're all basically the same.
Yeah.
You can't have all the same players on your team because defenses and pitching can, especially with analytics now, they can get around you. They can figure out how to beat you. And I think, we'll talk more about specifics about the Yankees and everything later. But I mean, it's just one of the teams. Now, we did our preview, and the week one we did our power rankings, and I believe you had the Minnesota Twins in the power rankings in the top 5. How are you feeling about the Twins all of a sudden with a 6-11 record?
Yeah, it's been a rough, in particular, it's been a rough week. I still love their talent, but it's like the same thing happened last couple of weeks in August last summer. They started out and they looked good, and they were right there with the White Sox, and they were playing the White Sox tough. And then everybody else that they would play, as the season went into September, they stopped playing them as well. And so I don't know if that's a leadership problem or what exactly is going on there, but their roster I still like, but their performance hasn't merited them being in my top 5 anymore. And so they dropped with a bullet, and it's difficult to see them getting back in there in the top 5 until they right the ship a little bit. And everything starts with pitching, especially in that big ballpark. They've got to be able to stop the other team from scoring runs, but I don't know. I mean, there's so much talent in the American League Central. You got to keep up or you're going to get buried. And I don't know. it could get bad. It could get bad quickly, but because originally I thought they were no worse than a second place team in that division. Now I'm not so sure.
Yeah, it's funny. We were talking before the show. The difference between week 2 and week 3 is a totally different outlook. Speaking of totally different outlooks, the National League, which we really haven't talked about much because most prognostications of the National League are pretty close. There's not too many big surprises out there, but for me, the biggest surprise is, it was going to be a two-man race out in the West. It was going to be all Los Angeles and all San Diego. And, well, look at what's happening. There's another team out there that everyone forgot about, the San Francisco Giants, now in second place.
Yeah, the Brewers were fighting with them for the last playoff spot last September, and I remember watching the Giants in August saying, yeah, they look okay, but I mean, they're a fun little club, but come on, I mean, they're not going to be around at the end, and they were. And so now, and then the season starts this year, and I thought, oh, the Giants, fun little club, they're not going to do anything. And now I got them in my top 5. I'm really impressed. And I mean, part of it this week, I mean, the press made a big deal about the Giants going back to Philly, and of course Kapler going back to Philadelphia, and the revenge in baseball I think is really overblown, but it did give the Giants a showcase to show what their players can do. And they played well, and so now part of it is that Philadelphia is not playing like they can yet, but the Giants in their own right are a pretty good team, and I think people have to start taking them a little bit more seriously. They had a bad hangover there, 18, 19, and trying to get themselves kind of turned around a little bit. And I did not give their pitching the credit that I needed to last year. And it seems like their talent's for real now, and they've got kind of a mix going, and they've got a ballpark that I think is difficult for a visiting team to play in, and put all those things together, and I think it's they might be for real, especially depending on what happens with the Padres. Are they going to be able to ride this out or not? But yeah, it's interesting. It's
we hadn't talked about the Giants at all.
No,
I mean, this is our third episode. First 2 episodes, we never even mentioned them. All of a sudden, boom. Now we got to talk about them. Now we gotta really analyze and say, wait a second, is this for real now? Am I seeing? And that was kind of funny that I said that, because the last thing I heard when I was coming down in my neighborhood was the sports talk show, the baseball talk show, was talking about, when is it where you see what's going on and then you move from I don't believe it to I now believe it. You know what I'm saying? How long does it take? Does it take 3 weeks? Does it take 2 months? Does it take 160 games before you will jump on the bandwagon? How long is it going to take you to realize this is a thing? We should make a thing of this.
Well, ordinarily, I'd say Memorial Day, but I don't think this gets back to the question we were dealing with last week, and that is, how do teams make personnel evaluations based on a 60-game season from the year before, and can they rely on any of that information going forward, or are they just flying blind? And the teams are still sorting themselves out a little bit, and I think either confirming or disproving what 2020 meant statistically for their franchises. So it's going to be maybe a little bit longer in that sorting out process, but I don't I mean, I'm becoming a believer in San Francisco because if they can, I mean, they missed by a whisker of getting into the playoffs. Now, I grant you the field was expanded last year and everything like that. Okay, sure. But even so, you still have to make the playoffs, and they almost did. And I can't remember, they finished either right in front of or right behind Philly, who was right behind the Brewers. So it was like a cluster.
Yeah, it was a 3-man race there at the end.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, and they're all under 500. And so that matters. But even so, there's something there. And Kepler, I think, I mean, there was a case to be made that the Phillies shouldn't have whacked him when they did. And they got excited about getting Girardi, obviously. But was he doing a good enough job on his own in Philadelphia to merit staying? And I think there was at least an argument to be made that yes, he was. And so then he goes to San Francisco, beats out McClendon for the job, which was controversial in itself, but it looks like they knew something. Looks like they had the right idea. So I don't know. It's impressive.
And I mention this all the time. And once again, people roll their eyes at me, but trust me on this one. Take this one to the bank, tie it up in a time capsule, pull it out in 10, 15 years. Listen to what I'm saying. Last year, the San Francisco Giants catching was a mess because Buster Posey took the season off because of the COVID protocols. He is back this year. If whatever sport you play, whether it's baseball, football, hockey, whatever, right? The person that makes the play calls is the most important person on both sides of the ball, offensively and defensively. So the catcher makes the call most of the time. And if you have a good catcher back there, for example, Yadier Molina, who is taking one of the worst pitching staffs I've ever seen in my entire life, except for Jack Flaherty, and made them halfway decent this season. If it wasn't for Yadier Molina, the Cardinals wouldn't even be where they're at right now. And that's not very good to begin with because their pitching staff is awful. If you watch their games, they're awful. I picked the Brewers to win the division this year. I'm believing in the Brewers. Compare the two pitching staffs. Brewers by a mile, right? But yet there's only a couple games separating them because of the play caller. I think Buster Posey being back is a big boost for not for his offense, but for his play calling abilities.
Yeah, it's tough to quantify that stuff. I think,
yeah, right.
But it's real because you can see it in terms of won-loss records. And I mean, Molina's just a freak anyway because of all of the games he's caught and the fact that he's still able to not be in a wheelchair.
Right.
But beyond that, I mean, his either he has the best propaganda program going on, or he's got an entire, like he's got generations of pitchers that rave about him. And so he's either really good at passing out the Kool-Aid, or he really does make a difference. And to a pitcher, if you think the person makes a difference, then they do make a difference because so much of it is psychological. So yeah, I know what you're saying. I think Posey being there does make a difference, and certainly bodes well if he can stay healthy for their ability to stay in the race with his leadership. And I think his bat's going to come around too, but we'll see how that goes.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's get into our top 5 if you're ready for it.
I am.
We're going to do our power ranking. So this is our analysis of the teams that we feel are playing the best, have the best mojo going on right now in the game. If we were to pick 5 teams, these would be our finalists to, like, if the season ended today, these would be our 5 finalists for the playoffs. So who's our number 5 this week? And is it somebody new on the list?
Yeah, I have 2 new teams, and I intentionally make it difficult for new teams to get on the list. But I have the Giants as my number 5 team, and if any, I mean, I'm feeling like I've been a little bit slow to the party, but they have definitely earned it this week. And I mean, to me, again, it's the Padres. The door has opened a little bit, and so they've got this opportunity. And if they can take advantage of it, they're going to be there for a while, I think. But there's a lot of things to like about San Francisco right now, and they are my number 5 right now.
That's a good call. My number 5 is going to be the team that I predicted was going to win the National League Central Division, the Milwaukee Brewers. I think they're finally starting to make a little bit of noise. They got off kind of a rocky start this season. Weren't playing great. They didn't have much consistency going on. It seems like now with Woodruff pitching, he's a beast. And who would have thought Cy Young for Woodruff? I'm thinking that because, wow, I think he has like a .48 ERA going after 3 starts.
Yeah,
that's pretty good. I don't know if anybody's told you that, but that's pretty good. Having low numbers is usually pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I just think they haven't played very many games at home. It doesn't seem like to me. They seem to be finally getting their swagger back. And let's see here. Navarez, he's hitting the ball well. And they beat San Diego tonight. Didn't even know that. So, it seems like they're getting good pitching as well as good timely hitting. So they are my number 5 team right now.
I wish I was a believer, but I'm not yet.
And that is your team, right?
That is my team.
And it's interesting. You're not a believer in Milwaukee. Yeah. I'm not a believer in the Cardinals, and these are our 2 teams.
Yeah.
Is that because we're too hard on our own team?
Maybe.
You think that might have something to do with it?
That could be. I just, I don't know. There's just so many things. You know what I think part of it is? I think for both of us, we know too much.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know too much, if you get too close to grandma, you can really see all the things that are wrong.
Right.
And that's kind of what I'm feeling like. But maybe in a few weeks I'll feel differently and I'll just be so excited. But I'm not feeling
You're not drinking the Kool-Aid yet. All right. Who's number 4 for you, my friend?
Those Red Sox, those Boston Red Sox. And I thought long and hard about them for getting that number 4 spot. But I'm just, it's not an individual and it's not a series. It's just this overwhelming sort of accumulation of metrics that they've got going, where it's like right now, it's like all of the pieces are kind of working for them. This is not a team, and except for you would have predicted this, but this is not a team that I would have thought on the 21st of April would have a +30 run differential. No. And so I'm kind of, as much as I'm trying to understand it, I also think that sometimes when you're looking at teams like this, you have to just acknowledge it and then place them where they ought to be. And for me this week, that's number 4.
Yeah. That's a good call. My number 14, believe it or not, is a team that we have not even mentioned yet in 3 weeks, right? not even mentioned them. But they play in a pretty tough division with two powerhouse teams. Nobody thinks high of them. Their record is a respectable 11-7. That is the Seattle Mariners. Since when, after 18 games, has Seattle Mariners ever been 11-7? I mean, it's been decades since they've been 11-7. I think somebody had said the other day it's been since 1990 something, 1996 maybe, since they had such a good start. We don't talk about them. Why don't we talk about them? They're in second place behind Oakland. If not for Oakland's 11-game winning streak, they would be in first place. Why are we not talking? When do we got to start drinking the Kool-Aid for the Seattle Mariners? Because they've had literally 40 years of existence and they've had one good season. Nobody's a believer. Right now, they're my number 4 most powerful team in the league. They're going up against quality opponents, and they're beating them. And that's all you have to do in baseball is win 2 out of 3 games, and you win the series, and you're going to make the playoffs.
I love them. I do. And I saw a lot of Mariner baseball last August when I had COVID, and they didn't win a lot of games in August, but their pieces looked really, really good to me. And if there is a team with a park that is built for a baseball that's a little bit deflated, I think it's the Seattle Mariners. And so now, having said that, I don't expect them to win their division this year, but they are coming, and they've got a lot of kids that can play the game. And so someone's been doing some good talent evaluation for their organization, and especially their position players, I think, are really impressive.
I think they remind me of Kansas City. Both of these teams have younger kids that haven't developed as big bodies. They don't hit the ball as far, but they hit a lot of singles and doubles. They steal bases. Wait a minute. That sounds almost like baseball we used to know, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, so that was my number 4, and I figured, you know what? It might only last a couple months, and they might have some issues later on. Hopefully not, but you never know. So I'm going to get them in while I can. So number 4, Seattle Mariners.
My number 3 is the Chicago White Sox, and
you're still a believer.
I'm still a believer, and it's not because of no hitters, but and I still have some concerns about their defense, but they can pitch and they can hit the long ball, and they can score runs. And so if it's a team that the only thing about it is that I wonder if I'm giving them too much credit too soon. But I've got them number 3, and I feel like that's about where they're at. Might be a little high, but that's about where I'm thinking they will be in September. But I might be jumping the gun by a few weeks on this, but I've got them number 3 this week.
Jose Abreu's a beast.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about having a great start to a season. He's been lights out for the White Sox so far. So hopefully he'll continue it. I have not drunk even though I have them in my AL American League Championship Series preview show. I had them going all the way to the championship game. I've still not jumped on board this season. So I'm also late to the party on them. I'm in a wait and see at this point, but I'm hoping they come around. Tony La Russa, I love him. He's a great guy, great manager, great for baseball. You might not like his style. You might not like what he said or does, but you know what? He's good for baseball, I think. So What am I doing? Number 3?
Yes.
Yeah, number 3. We hammered them. I hammered them week 1. I was on this team. Terrible, terrible start. 1-7 start. They sucked. They couldn't hit the ball. They weren't doing anything right. I mean, they shouldn't even play the rest of the season. They were so bad. Then they go out and win 11 in a row. And all of a sudden, they're in first place, and they are now my number 3 most powerful team in baseball. That is the Oakland A's. I mean, I watched 3 or 4 of their games the first week or 2 of the season, and I was not impressed at all. Now it's like a switch went off, right? And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, you know what? We are professional baseball players. Maybe we should start to do some of these things. I don't know what it is. I have no idea. I mean, teams get hot when 10 of 12, 13 of 15 or whatever. But I mean, like literally now they are 10-0 and 11-0 in their last 11 games. The run differential, which was minus 30 something, is now only -2. So they're starting to pitch better. They're all of a sudden. So my number 3 and number 4 are both from the American League West, the Oakland A's.
Nice. Well, my number 2, I want to see him do it. I'm going to see him do it a little more, and then I'll reward him. My number 2 team is the team that's been number 2 the whole way for me, and that's the Cincinnati Reds, or if you're Milo Hamilton, the Cincinnati Reds. They are still I may be more impressed with them than I should be. I still don't trust their park. I still don't think that any park in which can be a party to Scooter Gennett hitting 30 dongs in a season is something that should be acceptable. But having said that, you still have to play the games and you still have to win the games, and they're winning enough right now and doing it in a way that I think is pretty impressive. They're coming along, and I've got them at number 2, and I think that that's really they're in there now. They're like in my head that this is their level, and so maybe they'll crash and burn, but for right now, they're impressing me. So they're number 2.
Awesome. I like that call. I do. I kind of jumped off. They were my number 1 team in baseball after week 1 because I saw a lot of swagger coming out of them. They still have the swagger. They just haven't been as lucky, so they dropped out of my top 5. I would probably have them at about 6, 7, 8-ish. I mean, they're still a really solid team. So I like the call there, Kirk. My number 2 is, surprise, surprise, who would have thunk it? The team that one of my least favorite teams, the Boston Red Sox. So I don't have any fan bias going into this pick. I am not a Boston Red Sox fan, but I have drunk their Kool-Aid already. I saw the potential last year. They just, for whatever reason, just couldn't get things going and didn't have the desire, and they just didn't feel like they wanted to be there. Cora comes back, and all of a sudden they do have this swagger again, and they are hitting some really bombs. I mean, JD Martinez is on fire. They lose Mookie Betts. It's kind of like, there's something to be said about this attitude of it's us versus the world, right? How many times have we heard that in sports? And now, they've been written off for the last couple of seasons. Nobody heard them. Oh, Boston, now they're rebuilding. Now it's like they got this attitude of it's us versus the world. And when people have that attitude, they put a little bit more effort and desire into winning. And right now, 12-6, 30 run differential. Cora got the team playing well. Nothing else to be said.
What's the moral of the story about Benintendi?
The moral of the story. See, I was never a big Benintendi fan. I was not happy when Kansas City picked him up. I don't know what the moral is with him. Is he? I don't know. I'd never been impressed with them. What do you think?
Must have been. I mean, beyond the injuries, he must have been part of the problem, right?
You would think, right? Because like he's done nothing in Kansas City. Like literally, I don't know what his batting average, but it's got to be just horrible for a team that's hitting pretty well. Let's go to Baseball Reference real quick and see what it is.
Because okay, so, he was injured. Okay, I get that. And he's had trouble staying on the field, but, like, he's one of those pieces. Okay, Betts is gone, but, like, there's a limited number of, and Renicky, of course, is gone and Cora's in, and that's a significant change. But he must have been a problem of some kind, right?
Yeah, he didn't get maybe he didn't get along with players. I was never impressed with his kind of, I know what it was that I didn't like about him, right? He had that kind of cocky attitude, and when you're good, right, you can back up your cocky attitude. And he was good for a couple years. Then he fell off. And, and even with Boston, I didn't think he was doing that much, but he still had that cocky attitude. He still got that cocky attitude. Well, he's actually toned down the cocky attitude now that he's in Kansas City. So it'll be interesting to see how he ends up doing long term there. I think he's going to be headed for the bench soon, is what I think.
Mm-hmm.
But that's my number two.
All right, my number one. I'm unable to come up with a satisfactory reason to move the Dodgers off of number one yet, and so they are still my number one team. Again, I don't expect them to be there. I don't think this is going to last, but I also get that they are sort of riding the wave right now, and they're good. They're a good team. They're deep, but when the adversity comes, and it's going to come, let's see how they handle it. And I think that's where the Firestone is going to hit the road. But for right now, they are my number one team.
Yeah, sorry to say, ditto. Pretty much everything you just said. I got the Dodgers obviously as number 1, 2. They're 38 in run differential, 14-4. So they've only lost 4 games. That opening day thrubbing by Colorado was one of the 4. So if you take that one out, they've only lost 3 other games. They just seem to have the answers, like you said, right now. But I agree. It's like the Tampa Bay Rays. You flip the coin and you get it to land heads 20 times in a row. Sooner or later, it's going to end up on tails. So sooner or later, they're going to run into some problems, and we'll find out if the rest of their pitching staff can hold up. We'll find out if Kelly Jansen is going to revert to his 2019 form, et cetera, et cetera. We'll find out if Mookie Betts will continue to be smiling and happy when they start losing. So losing makes, what's the expression? Losing makes, I forget what the expression is, but losing breeds losing or whatever. So we'll see what happens. I also don't believe wholeheartedly they will be there in the end. I think they'll go to the playoffs, but I don't think, they've got everything going for them right now. We'll see what happens. So number 1, unfortunately, not a big Dodger fan, but I would love to see San Francisco. I'm not a San Francisco Giant fan, but I would love to see San Francisco beat them out this year. That would be I think anytime you have something like that happen in baseball, it makes it more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
I do. Absolutely.
All right, let's talk about our two most disappointing teams that we feel right now are not living up to the hype going into the 2021 season. What do you think, Kurt?
Well, I have two new ones.
That's not
Yeah.
like you.
No, I know. I'm disappointed in myself, frankly. But my number two most disappointing team is the Washington Nationals, and the reason why is that I can't figure out what the plan is. I mean, is this, so as far as I can tell, and I could be wrong, but as far as I can tell, we're trying to get in the Wayback Machine and pretend it's still 2019. And so we aren't really fundamentally changing what we're doing. We're just going to hope that what we had then is going to kind of come back and just continue to do what it did then, and that's going to be enough. And then I don't know what, but that's what it seems like. Like there's not really a serious plan. And so, yeah, I've got them. I've got them. It's not that I thought they were going to be awesome. I didn't. But I'm just stunned by the lack of a plan. And I took a look at them this week, and they richly, I think, deserve to be in the bottom two.
Yeah, I agree. That's actually a really good call. They discussed Washington quite a bit today. I actually normally I just have lunch at the office or whatever, but this time I met my wife, and so I was driving there, and they were talking about the Nationals. So I got a lot of baseball chatter today, and they were talking Nationals and all the problems and everything, and they rely on talent of their players as opposed to actually coming up with a formula and a plan, as you had mentioned. And I think you called it right there on the head. It's like they got lucky in 2019, very lucky, and they think that they can just, we'll just put these players out and they'll just be the best thing ever. I mean, they were, one of the announcers or the commentators were talking about how they had Trey Turner in the 4th spot in the lineup, and it's like, why do you have him in the 4th spot in the lineup? I just don't understand that. Some of their pickups have been a little, not high on some of their pickups.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, anyways, my number two most disappointing team, man, it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to say it, but it's my Atlanta Braves, who I already predicted was going to the World Series and going to win it this year. They're 7-10, so they're not horrible right now, but they're disappointing because, as the old expression goes, you can't win a World Series in April, but you can lose it. Their pitching staff, right, going into this season, they got all these young studs, and they were all coming back, and they're all going to be aces, and which one of them is going to win the Cy Young this year, right? And they go in with this big head thinking that, and they get lit up the first 3 weeks of the season. They have a totally different mindset for the rest of the season. If they come in the first 3 weeks and they're blowing guys away and, shutting the opponents out, then they have a different attitude for the rest of the season. I think the Braves pitching staff is in a kerfuffle, right? They don't know. They've been told they're supposed to be really good, but they're not pitching really good. So what are we supposed to do? And I just don't see. It's like deers in the headlight. It's like, what am I doing? Should I be really good? Should I not be really good? Hey, Peter, how you doing? Standings are a big surprise for sure. Yeah, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. Yeah, I had the Braves going to the World Series this year. I thought this is going to be their year, but they just don't have. I think right now it's just the whole lack of pitching. When they got smoked the first couple weeks of the season, they've kind of righted the ship a little bit here and there. It seems like they're winning one, losing one, and winning one, losing one. But the first couple weeks were not very kind to them, and now their pitchers are now thinking that maybe we're not as good as we thought we were going to be, and maybe we have to reevaluate things. So, kind of disappointing.
Yeah, they're doing this, and Acuna's on fire.
Yeah.
So
yes, that was my other point I was going to bring up, but I didn't want to carry on too much. But I mean, they have the MVP of the National League right now in Acuna, who is on fire, and they still are 7-10. So what would they be if he wasn't on fire?
And what will they do when he cools off?
Right.
Because he can't sustain this. So yeah, I'm not a buyer on the Braves, but that's a good call, because you could put them in the bottom two, especially when you think about expectations.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
For sure.
All right, number one, Kirk.
Number one is, it's easy to pile on this team, but God, and I try just in my personal life, whenever there's a chance to pile on AJ Hinch, I take it. And this week, I think he richly deserves it. Wow, they're bad. They're really bad. And like, I've been looking for reasons to think that maybe, like, Tigers ownership expressed all this confidence in him, in hiring him, which they had to, because it could have been awful in terms of ticket sales, but they really got behind him, and they talked him up, and they really talked positively about him. And it seemed like in spring, it seemed like it was okay there. And maybe he was making some positive impacts, but and they've got a long way to go in terms of talent, I grant you. But it's not working well. They're not playing well. They're getting hammered. It's just, and it's not about expectations for me for this pick. It's just bad baseball. And so they may not be there next week in this bottom two, but I feel like if I don't recognize the crappy job that AJ Hinch is doing, I feel like I'm going to miss the boat, and I'm going to kick myself later on. So I'm piling on him while I have this moment.
Kick him while he's down. Kick him while he's down.
Yes. So the Tigers are my number one joke of a team right now.
Which is saying something, because there was supposed to be a lot of bottom feeders this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was supposed to be a lot of bottom feeders.
And
to be honest, like Pittsburgh, they're awful. They have no talent. Really? They're almost 500.
Right?
So, they're not as bad as we thought. And again, this isn't just 5 games in the season. We're almost 20 games in the season, and they're almost 500. Texas Rangers. They're horrible. My God, they got no talent. They're nothing, right? Yeah. I'm sorry. Wait a minute. What's their record? They are 9-10. Really? So they're 1 game below 500, but they're terrible. So yes, there were supposed to be some bottom feeders this year. Detroit's a bottom feeder, and you're calling them out on it. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, my number one, and this is not boding well for my preseason World Series, that I had the Braves facing the Yankees, but my number one most disappointing team is the Yankees. So maybe I put the Jester curse on them or something, because holy crap. We talked about them in the beginning, so I'm not going to rant too much about them, because we've kind of already talked about but you literally cannot have 9 of the same players all stepping up to the plate wanting to hit home runs. You've got to try and find some other players. If you got 9 of those players, then you're doing something wrong. So this is more about the direction the Yankees are headed. They need to find some better players, trade some of these players, get rid of the same player. They have basically 9 Stantons on their team. They all swing for the fence. I've never seen anything like it. And, of course, 9 times out of 10, they're striking out. That's not fundamental baseball. And you can't win without fundamental baseball. It is a manager. What are you supposed to tell these guys? Oh, don't swing for the fence anymore? They've been doing this for the last 10 years. What do you – oh, wait a minute. Okay, coach, I won't swing for the fence anymore. No, I mean, certain players are built to do that, right? And it seems like everyone on their team is built to do that. The only person – there's 2 people on the Yankees that are doing anything right now, and that's Garrett Cole, who's pitching lights out, and Aroldis Chapman, which is actually coming in and actually trying to save a game when the Yankees are fortunate enough to be up a run or 2. So besides those 2, the rest of the pitching staff I was looking at earlier, they're like between 5 and 9 ERA. One of their starters, I think it was Jermaine, was 0-3 with a 9-point-something ERA. Not going to win a lot of games with your starting pitching like that. Just saying.
Yeah, and it has occurred to me this week that Aaron Boone's health problems may, in fact, help him keep his job for a while, unless he has to resign because he doesn't feel good. But because they can't launch the guy after he's come back from what Aaron Boone's come back from, especially after they go to great lengths to recruit him in the first place to take the job. But they're not going to be able to fire all the players, and they're also not going to be able to trade very many of them because those contracts are unbelievable. But if you look at the defensive metrics of this team, and I did this week, the range, these guys aren't getting the balls. And so it's like they can't cover the ground. That's not something that is going to be fixed by warm weather. I mean, if you can't play defense, you can't play defense, and you can't fix it really. And so you got to find a different combination or some other way to do it. And I think now, while I would be the first to say that the Yankees pitching staff is not overburdened with talent, at least at this point, I would also say that they could sue their defense for non-support and win. So I think that a lot of their problem is defense and range and getting the balls and turning those hits into outs. And they're not doing it, and I don't see them starting to do it really anytime soon. Now they may improve to mediocre, but and in that division that could get them in the race for a while this summer, but they are not a powerhouse, and they were really overrated in just about every publication that I read online and in print in February. So I don't know. They're not. I think that's a really good call. They're really overrated, really overhyped, and I don't see reason for optimism this year. Maybe it's coming, but what happens if Cole goes down for a couple starts?
Yeah, I mean, who's going to be your fifth then, right? As you move everyone up the chain when Cole's out for a month, recuperating from hypertension or whatever.
He's not a kid.
No, he's not. No.
So I don't know.
Yeah, it's. I mean, you see the potential last year, right? Going all the way to the ALCS against Tampa Bay, and you think, oh, they're just a step away, right? But then you see them this year, and they're a lot more than a step away at this point in the season. Mm-hmm. So I'm really hoping for a big turnaround from my World Series guys.
Yeah.
Hey, Kirk, do we have a sponsor this week?
Oh my God. See, here's the problem. Here's the
Uh-oh.
problem.
Here's the problem.
The problem is we're moving, and I packed everything. I've packed everything, but
well, we can get the sponsor next week. That's fine.
we'll have to do that.
We'll look for a special sponsor for next week.
We'll do that.
All right, let's talk about this week in baseball history. This is the week 3, so we're talking between the 14th and the 21st of April in baseball history. We're going to give you some awesome information, some super cool stats, and we're gonna blow your mind. Mm-hmm. It's going to be gray matter going everywhere here when we talk about this day in baseball. What day did you choose from baseball history?
Wednesday, April 21st, 1982.
Whoa. Okay. What happened on that day?
The Atlanta Braves won Game 13 in a row to start the 1982 season by defeating the Cincinnati Reds. Came from nowhere. I mean, I was watching a lot of Braves baseball, like in the late 70s, early 80s, like when they were really, really bad. And then when they started to get a little bit better, and then all of a sudden in 82, Torrey got hired and Murphy went crazy and they had some pitching and Horner was good. And all of a sudden they just exploded and they kept winning and winning and winning and winning and winning. And they became legitimately America's team. And so I wore my America's team jersey today for a theme.
I see it.
Yep. And so on this day, they had beaten Billy Ball's 1981 streak. And on this game, on April 21st, they won their 13th to set their own record to start the season. 1982 Atlanta Braves was a lot of fun. And if you haven't seen It's a Long Way to October on YouTube, you should watch it. It's incredibly entertaining. It's about that season, about the behind-the-scenes stuff. A lot of fun to watch that as well. So It's a Long Way to October on YouTube. So that's my Wednesday.
Great recommendation. That is awesome. So we try to teach and inform our viewers and just try to get them to know a little bit more about the game they love. That's what we do here. Speaking of love, I'm going to give you a little bit of love because my day in history kind of goes back to what happened last week with you predicting something. For those of you who didn't get to watch the first part of this episode, there was a little comment that you made last week. And what was that comment?
My comment was that there was going to be a no-hitter in the major leagues before Memorial Day.
Yeah, and what ended up happening?
Well, actually, that night, we got off. It was actually, I think it was underway when we were on. I think 3 or 4 innings into it, maybe. And I didn't know that. But then you emailed me about an hour later, and I didn't know that it had happened. And I was like, what is he talking about? And then I'm like, oh, my God, don't tell me. And then I realized that it had happened. Yeah. And so we got the no-hitter that night. So that was
so we've been talking a lot about no-hitters. There was also a no-hitter just a week before that.
That's right.
And that was for the San Diego Padres.
Right.
That was their first no-hitter in their history. Do you remember how many games it was roughly?
Oh, my God.
8,200 and I think like 76 games they had played before they actually got their first no-hitter.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy? 8,000. Wow, 276 games before they got their first no-hitter. Well, my day in baseball history is April 17th. What happened on April 17th, you might ask? Well, I was born on April 17th. That's what happened. Another thing that happened on April 17th, 1969. So I would have been 3 years old. I'm sitting in my little high chair, and Mommy's got my little birthday cake. And
Nice.
this event happened 1969. Do you know what happened in 1969? There were some new
Anything.
teams
Anything.
introduced
Yes.
to the league that year. One of those teams is actually up north in Canada, the Montreal Expos. And on this day, April 17th, 1969, because his finger's down, 9 games into their team existence, Bill Stoneman of the Montreal Expos throws a 7-0 no-hitter against the Philadelphia Phillies in only the 9th game of their the Expos existence. So what a variation between San Diego and Montreal.
Mm-hmm.
First no-hitter 9 days into existence, and you got to think, wow, man, what's crazy? And then you have San Diego, 8,200 and some odd games into theirs, so you finally get their first no-hitter. What a difference. April 17th, 1969, Bill Stoneman. What do you think about that?
Well, when you think about the fact that the Expos only won 49 other games that season, it's even more depressing. But it's
right. I mean, that's another thing. I was like, oh, the Expos must have been pretty good then. I looked it up, and I'm like, holy shit, they were really bad, and yet they ended up getting a no-hitter 9 games into their existence. Wow, and you even knew that. I bow to your existence.
Well, thank you so much. But they made some trades that year, and they had Maury Wills as their starting shortstop, and then they traded him back to the Dodgers, and they got Fairley and some other stuff for him, and but they were exciting for the fans of Montreal, and they were in a really horrible. Jerry Park was just brutal, but the fans in Montreal were all about him. They loved him, and there should probably still be baseball in Montreal. But Bill Stoneman came through and threw that no-hitter, and probably
not only that, but a little bit of tidbit information about Bill Stoneman for you guys out there that want to know. This was not his only no-hitter. He actually threw another no-hitter in 1972 against the New York Mets. Yeah. So he threw 2 no-hitters in his career. That's pretty good.
Yeah,
I would say that's right up there with some of the better pitchers. Dave Garner, he's being funny. I have a hockey question. He says, this is a baseball show, Dave. Baseball, it's got a round ball, not a flat.
Dave, I'll tell you the answer. Everything is icing. Just if you don't know, just say, well, it's icing.
It's all icing.
That's all you have to do. It's icing. That's the answer to every hockey question. Icing. That's it. That's all you got to know.
Oh, brother. What else do we got to talk about? Anything on your list over there that I'm missing or forgetting about?
Well, we got to Acuna. I thought we should talk about him. I really want to talk about Joe Girardi, but we can talk about him next week. I got a thing about Joe Girardi, but he can wait. We do have to talk about the Phillies. I thought the Phillies were going to the World Series. I'm not so sure now. And
I was high on them. I was high on them. I think I picked them to win the division. I'm still drinking the Kool-Aid.
Me too.
All right. But I'm drinking a little slower now.
Yeah. And we got 2 people with bad backs that are going to fundamentally change, I think, the pennant race in the National League. One of them plays right field for the Phillies, and the other one plays left field for the Brewers. And so we should talk about bad backs next week too.
Bad backs? Okay. That'll be on the agenda for next week. Bad backs.
So those things are sort of on my radar to watch this week. So
any bold predictions like last week coming up?
Well, I'm still thinking there. I'm not counting last week's no hitter. I think there's still going to be another no hitter.
Still another no.
And
still another no.
Yep, one more no. That's my bold prediction for. I don't know if it's going to happen tonight, but before Memorial Day, we will have one more. At least.
All right, my bold prediction. I don't know how bold it is because I mean injuries happen quite a bit, but I predict there's going to be a season-ending injury to a pitcher. I don't know why or how. I just have this feeling that something bad is going to happen by the end of April. Like somebody's going to ACL out for the season or Tommy John's or whatever. And I'm talking about like a major like Scherzer or Kershaw. I mean, that'd be great. Like, we talked about the Dodgers are going to meet adversity, right? So,
right.
Hey, Rich, thank you for coming by. I appreciate it, Rich. Thank you very much. We appreciate all our viewers that come by. Yeah, so that's kind of our previews of coming up next week. We're going to be talking about bad backs. We all get older. We all get bad backs. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about a little bit about the Phillies. And, of course, we'll talk about all the fun things that happened the week of April 22nd through the 29th. I guess that would be right. Yeah, so that's it. What do you think?
I think we're set. I think we're good to go.
We're good? I think we're good? I'm trying to think if there's anything else I was going to bring up. I'm sure there's like a million things, but sometimes we just gloss over them, and so I forget about them. But yeah, had fun talking with you again, Kurt.
Absolutely. Good
time. I know that there's this little baseball show every Wednesday at what time?
Oh, that would be 9 Eastern, 8 Central.
Right. And they talk baseball stuff, right? They inform their users and they kind of give them all kinds of great information that they would never know in this.
Can't get anywhere else. That's right.
I mean, and next week we're gonna have a special sponsor. That'll be it. When are you moving, by the way? Soon?
April 30th. So
is it a Wednesday?
The packing is underway. Everything is full bore. And so we are moving about an hour north, and so it's the biggest geographic move I've ever done in my life. And there are Ouija boards, magic 8 balls. There's everything really is being brought in on this, and to make it successful. So, yeah.
Oh boy.
So, yeah.
Well, good luck with it. Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
The 30th is a Saturday, thank God, because I don't want you to miss the show because you're moving or anything. Are you going to have any problems next week on the 28th?
Yeah, no, I think we'll be okay.
All right.
Yeah, I've got I think we're all right, but it's been a project, let's just say. But
I bet. I mean, just to pack up all those cards and dice games is going to be a full-time job.
That alone has been absolutely.
Here's one last comment before we go here. Todd B says had to drop in and say Vlad Jr. is raking it. I gave Vlad a lot of flack, right? I gave not drinking the Vlad drink at all. I'm still not drinking it. Still not impressed. He might be hitting it. Let's see if he continues. No. Not drinking it either.
No.
Yeah.
No, I don't. He's not going to be on the All-Star team. He may be on the disabled list by that point. This screams crash.
Is he going to stand first?
Well, he has to. I mean, unless you're going to DH him, he's so fat.
I mean, he came up as a third baseman, so you literally in one season you go from third to first. That doesn't show a lot of heart and desire to want to be there.
If I am calling someone fat, things have gotten way out of control.
Okay? Right. Right.
No, I'm not buying it. Nope.
Nah, I'm not buying it either. Next week we're going to talk bad backs. We're also going to tie maybe we'll talk about whether we're in or out, buying stocks in certain players or dropping them, and we'll have like 20 players. We'll go through and we'll decide if we're buying stocks in them or not. That'll be a fun segment to do.
We may have a fired manager by next week.
Who?
I don't know, but
Ooh,
we're getting to that season.
You're getting that part, huh?
Yep, we're getting to that. It's not going to be
bad.
AJ
Matt
Hinch,
Carpenter. Yeah, Matt. He is. He's seen better days, Matt Carpenter. I mean, I told people this back in 2019. Signing these players up to these long-term contracts is just dumb. Just dumb. They have not worked out for any team that I can think of.
That guy got old in about 15 minutes. I don't know what happened there, but
I mean, the talk of the offseason was about Lindor, right? He's gonna thrive when he goes to the New York Mets. Hit his first home run tonight. 19 games in the season. There's
another guy whose defensive range has not been going the right direction either.
Right, and now they've got him signed for what, 10 years?
It's a lot, and it's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
Getting out from under it either.
So next week we'll have a little segment. If you have any thoughts, leave a comment down below on players you want us to either buy stock in or trade. We'll do like the old gladiators. Thumbs up, thumbs down next week. We'll come up with a list of 20, 25 players. We'll give you our thoughts on them. Well, thanks to Don and Todd and Richard and Dave and Peter. Thank you all for coming out tonight for I'm Kirk.
I'm Kurt.
And this is our baseball show, week 3, 2021 baseball season. We'll see you for week number 4 next week. Take care, guys.